When the divorce papers were finally signed, she smiled as if a heavy burden had been lifted off her shoulders. I remember that moment vividly. Her eyes were bright, her tone light, and her laughter echoed in the lawyer's office as if the end of our marriage was a celebration. I didn't share her joy. For me, it felt like a chapter one wasn't ready to close had been ripped out of the book of my life. But I didn't stop her. I just stood there, numb, as she walked out of my life without looking back. In the months that followed, I buried myself in work. Late nights at the office became routine, and weekends were filled with anything that could distract me from the silence of my empty apartment. Friends tried to help, but grief isn't something that leaves when you're told to move on. It fades slowly, painfully, and only when it wants to. She, on the other hand, seemed to be thriving. Through mutual acquaintances and the ever-watchful eyes of social media, I saw her traveling, laughing, and starting her own business. Every photo she posted showed the same smile, the one that used to make me believe we could face anything together. Seeing her so happy while I was still trying to piece myself back together hurt more than I wanted to admit. A year passed like that, quietly, monotonously, and without closure. Then, one day, my manager called me into his office and told me I had been chosen to represent our company at a regional business conference. It was a big opportunity, and I was proud. But fate, it seemed, wasn't done testing me. When I arrived at the conference center, I saw her name on the list of speakers. For a brief moment, I considered leaving. I didn't want to see her again, not when I was still unsure of how I'd react. But running away wouldn't help, so I stayed. The first time I saw her on stage, she looked confident, professional, and radiant in a way that reminded me why I fell in love with her in the first place. She spotted me in the audience halfway through her talk. For a second, her smile faltered, but she recovered quickly, continuing as if nothing had happened. Later that evening, there was a networking dinner. I tried to avoid her, busying myself with small talk and business cards. But eventually, our paths crossed. "It's been a while," she said softly, her voice steady but her eyes searching mine. I nodded. "A year, almost to the day," I replied. There was a pause, a silence thick with memories neither of us dared to touch. We ended up sitting together, more out of habit than intention. Conversations started stiffly, full of polite questions and formal answers. But as the night went on, the walls between us began to crumble. She told me about her business, how hard it had been at first but how fulfilling it had become. I shared how I'd been promoted, how I finally felt like I was moving forward. When dessert came, she sighed and said, "You look happier now." It was strange hearing that from her. "It took time," I admitted. "At first, I didn't think I could be." She nodded slowly, stirring her coffee. "I thought leaving was what I needed," she confessed, "but I didn't realize how much I'd miss the calm you brought into my life." Her honesty surprised me. There was no bitterness in her tone, only regret. I didn't know how to respond, so I simply said, "We both made mistakes." She smiled faintly. "Yes, but I think we needed to break apart to understand them." After the dinner ended, we walked outside together. The city lights reflected on the nearby lake, casting soft ripples of gold across the water. We stood there in silence, the cool wind brushing past us. "Do you ever think about what could have been?" she asked. I hesitated before answering. "Sometimes. But I think we became different people." She looked down, then up at me. "Maybe better ones," she said. There was something genuine in her expression, something peaceful. It wasn't an attempt to rekindle anything. It was a quiet acknowledgement that we had both grown, separately but sincerely. Before we parted ways, she reached out and gently touched my hand. "I'm glad we met again," she said softly. "Me too," I replied, and for the first time in a long while, I meant it. There was no anger, no sadness, just acceptance. As I watched her walk away into the glowing night, I realized that sometimes closure doesn't come through confrontation or apology. It comes through understanding. We had loved, we had lost, and now we had finally let go, not out of pain, but out of peace. When I returned home, I deleted her old photos from my phone, not out of resentment but because I no longer needed them. The memory of that evening was enough, a final chapter written with calm hearts and quiet smiles.